I probably was in my really late 20s when I ended up seeing him.
Or her.
There, nothing was completely visible in my studies, so I can't really confirm it.
So you said you have a theory as to why it's able to disappear so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
What is that theory? I think it's pretty genius myself.
My theory is that he's a burrower. And the reason why, and again, is because of the fact that people see him and then he's gone within a split second. I mean, what if, how they travel is more or less like an underground kind of thing? Because some
wombat.
Yeah. I mean, some people say that he's got claws on his hands or I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, I would assume that they could potentially be great diggers.
Well, the versatility of the fingers.
Well, that, and because of the fact that you just don't
see them.
You don't, people try to go back to where he was at. They look in the trees. They don't see him in the trees or anything like that. What if, he has holes in the ground, but he's intelligent enough to go ahead and have a type of covering, if you will.
Right, because they're such an elusive creature, apparently, that maybe they are smart enough to cover their tracks. I mean, there are other animals in the world that do things like that. None come to mind.
No, there's a spider that does that.
Yeah, there you go. Which also, a lot of times in the beginning of Bigfoot lore and sightings and things like that, they typically were up towards the north of the states and towards Canada and stuff. And through the years, I saw that there are quite a few sightings in Alabama and Mississippi.
Oh, no, here's something interesting that I learned. They're actually on the endangered species list in France, Germany, and I believe
Europe,
also in Australia. So apparently he gets around.
He burrows under the ocean. Could you imagine? That would be terrifying. But, I mean, I've heard stories of places where, of course, there's also, the abominable snowman, the stories of the Yeti and things like that. And also in, Vietnam, I think it's Vietnam, there have been sightings of creatures similar to ours, but not quite the same. Again, it's always this large monkeyish kind of creature, and it's just there, and then it's not. Hearing this kind of stuff is really exciting, because I like to believe that there are things in the world that we cannot explain. Of course, obviously, if I decided to go camping or hiking, I'll choose not to believe that Bigfoot is real. At the same time, there have been no attacks and things like that. So apparently he just doesn't care about us throughout all these hundreds of years. Yeah, the idea of it being able to burrow, I think that's pretty neat. At the same time, I've mentioned this to other people, and they will say, well, wouldn't you see the trails? Kind of like when a mole, digs, you can kind of see the ground.
They're just below the surface at that point, though.
But true, but I mean, a creature of that size, that would take a lot of strength to dig that far.
Well, you have to think about this, right? So during the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong were able to go ahead and dig underground, and they were deep enough that the American soldiers couldn't find them, and they would ambush the United States soldiers that way.
Really, if you think about the fact that a spider can create the perfect web without a map, without a YouTube tutorial, and it's efficient, it gets the job done. Things like this, or the fact, fish live, like the clownfish live in the where's Nemo? The little spongy things that they live in. Anemone. They can hide inside the things that are living on the rocks to keep them safe. Creatures, except they have the little things. Creatures are smart enough to know how to evade, how to disguise themselves.
Well, it's all instinctual. It's not something that they had to learn or anything. It's just that's their nature. That's what they do. So why is it that all of the footage and stuff like that is always blurry?
Looked that up last night. They're like, oh, well, apparently Bigfoot has this capability of only being visible with people with low-res cameras.
No, so what if it's this? What if Bigfoot isn't necessarily something that nature created, but is something that is man-made? Well, we'll go in the Godzilla realm, right? Nuclear radiation.
Or rocket raccoon.
Sure, rocket raccoon, yes. Radiation could put out certain waves and stuff like that can affect electronics.
That's true. Well, but that's like a fictitious thing. Are there any evidence of that having happened in the real world?
There are some unusual abnormalities, but I don't think that
happen from radiation?
Well, some of it can happen from radiation, but some of it also is more far-fetched in fiction. The other thing is that, as far as I know, those that had been, say, genetically corrupted from radiation, I don't know.
They don't usually live too long, do they?
That, and I don't think they'd be able to breed or reproduce.
Going back to maybe all the big feet are male, and that's why we don't see too many of them. You know, they're all introverts is what it is.
Yeah.
When you first told me the story, you were reserved. You did not want, it's almost like you did not want to believe what you had seen. And you saw it, and I could just tell when you came in and you said, I saw Bigfoot.
That's exactly how I said it, too.
Yeah. And, of course, I was excited. I go, what? And you're like, I think I saw Bigfoot. He didn't want to tell anybody. He didn't want me to tell anybody because I guess it was kind of embarrassing because only the crazies see these things. Do you believe what you saw was Bigfoot? Do you have any reservations, any doubts towards that thought process?
Not really, no.
Are you a believer now, like a staunch believer?
I am, but I'm not a nutbag.
Right. I couldn't have put it more politically correct.
Because, and again, I don't share it with everybody because, in fact, I don't want to be associated with the weirdos that are out there as like, I'm not part of the group that's out there to go ahead and hunt him and find him and get the actual footage of it and get, you know, $10,000 for finding it. No. And I don't need to go ahead and convince other people either.
Right.
Because people will probably be convinced at that point that I'm crazy. I'm not crazy because my mother had me tested.
As far as my own personal opinion about Bigfoot, like, it's kind of hard, again, just because I know him and I know that he doesn't lie and fabricate things. It's exciting to me to think that there really is something out there. I'm kind of like an in-between person. Like, I love to believe the idea that it is possible. I am a bigger believer, honestly, in the Loch Ness Monster. Not because I've seen it or that I know anybody that has, but just because of the fact that, from what I understand, Loch Ness connects to the ocean at some point, and there have been sightings of mysterious fishy creatures, you know, that we don't really recognize. So I don't know if the creature that's living in Loch Ness is the original, you know, Loch Ness. It could be some other kind of creature parading and masquerading around his Loch.
Sure, I'm going to go ahead and kill the original Loch Ness, take over his role, and then become the new and improved Loch Ness monster.
He does it for the views. He does it for the likes. Because like he said, there are so many undiscovered creatures in the ocean. It's easier to believe that something is living in Loch Ness that is unknown versus a giant ape man or woman living among us. Would it make any difference to you if somebody you knew also witnessed it? I mean, do you feel alone in this belief?
I don't necessarily think I feel alone. As you know, that's pretty prominent that there's a lot of people out there that believe in Bigfoot, but again, I don't want to be associated with the nutbags
that are out there.
So that's why I don't share it as much. That's why I am keeping.
I'll put his Instagram.
So, I mean, and if somebody tells me, I'll be like, oh, okay, that's great.
Okay.
And maybe I'll keep it to myself. Maybe I won't. Depends on how close I am to them or whatever like that.
You kind of have to gauge the nuttiness of the person.
Whether they're more like an almond or a nutmeg or whether I divulge that to other people and they don't believe me, that's up to them.
That's up to them. If there's any believers out there watching, any advice you could give them or...
Be aware of your surroundings, I guess.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to leave a like, leave a comment in below. Maybe you have seen Bigfoot or you have theories as well as to why suddenly he disappears. I like hearing all of them because, like I had said in other videos, I just like discussing possibilities and just having conversations and see where they lead to because I find them entertaining. And you just never know because this world is unpredictable and there's so many things yet undiscovered. Many big feet, big fi, big footers. There's plenty of them out there.
Big quadrupeds.
No.
Bipeds. Bipeds. Big bipeds.
We'll just bypass that joke. Bye.
Bye.
So you've got our swamp ones, our woodsy ones, you've got
Yeah,
the
they got the
snow
snow
ones
ones,
and the
yeah.
jungle ones apparently. So we're covering all of our bases. No respecter of culture.
Maybe there's a space one out there.
There might
somewhere,
be a
too.
space Bigfoot. That's what they found on the moon and they don't want us to.
Or is it big space?